Okay, first up, I'd like to thank the man, the myth, the legend, Toolnin for helping me acquire this figure. Yet again, the show can march on due to his efforts. Secondly, people are pretty confident they know how I'm going to react to this figure. But are you sure about that? Sure, it doesn't look quite like Optimus should, but remember, I like to think of Laser Prime as a different character than Optimus. And I do like this thing, but it is deeply flawed. The look of this figure is so weird. There's a lot to like here, but also a lot to be really critical of. Like, the paint is very good, but it's localized to the torso and alt mode, so there's nothing from the waist down. Shoulder pylons are really cool, but they are mounted too low, which makes his arms look like they're mounted weirdly low, which they are. His hands are basically hanging down to his knees, and the pylons don't actuate with the shoulder, so moving the arms in any direction makes them go from too long to suddenly very stubby and strange. It would be nice if you could choose to have them stay still or follow the arms, but these are locked in their Z-axis. One thing that can help is unlocking these bits and hinging them up on their rotations to pretend to raise the shoulder line higher. Thanks to Night21 for figuring that out. There is a slight problem though, in that it makes them too tall. Essentially before, they were right where they should have been. Now the shoulder pylons feel like they are towering over his head in an uncomfortable way. It does still look better like this, but it is not without compromise. I'm going to keep the shoulders in their normal positions for the review, as this is the intended design, but now you know that this is a good option. The shoulders have a cool gimmick where you can either put blast effects in these ports to give him shoulder lasers, or you can flip them up for some clear missile spam. Back in my day, these would have actually fired out. But instead, they're just clear plastic that's weirdly enough screwed into place. I don't know why this isn't like a compartment for the arms or something. It seems like they'd have enough space, but anyways, I'm here for this feature, it's just strangely executed. Then you got the legs. Once again, they're using the legs off the ER Prime, which if you know me, I kind of hate. But here's the thing, I think they actually kind of work here. For starters, this is, as I said, a different character in my book, who, maybe they have long legs. I don't know, I've never seen them in a show before. But I also like the way that the colors work here a lot more. I find the coal gray and cool blue a lot more interesting than on the ER Prime's legs, and they resculpted this part so it's not just the Siege's shins again. Though they did not take the time to get rid of the boil on the side of his knee, and I don't know why this is still here. Come on, you lazy bastards! At least this time it's hard to see amidst all the black of this figure. And they retooled the backs of his legs, so there's not all that weird stuff exploding out of the backs of his calves, and that gives us 2 extra weapon ports now. However, why is it still pinned in there? Could they seriously not figure out how to sculpt this so it didn't need an immobile pin holding it together 2 figures in? And why did they put a cover to hide the leg hollowness on only like 1/5 of the backs of the legs? 1, why'd they bother if it's not really helping? And 2, this makes the legs work less because they can't bend as far at the knee as either of the other 2 primes that use this basic shin design. Thanks, Hasbro, but I really wish you didn't bother at this point. Then you get to the backpack and, it's bad. Though it's not as noticeable as I was worried. Hell, they even try to justify it by putting some boosters on the bottom of it. Unfortunately, these aren't blast effect compatible, and you pretty much are never going to be looking at them. Then the biceps are really, really skinny with this boy. He is rocking some wet noodles, which really don't help his aesthetic as the more battle-ready prime. And what is up with the hands? I thought Hasbro was really trying to convince us that opening and closing hands are a sign of a top-tier figure, but instead this comes with these split mitts that are only this way as far as I can tell, so they can get around a lug on the sword that didn't need to be there. Or so he can kind of maybe hold the matrix in his chest a bit, because of course he has a matrix. Of course. The way it stores is a little cool and different. It is still impossible to get out, though. Also, quick question. Where are his Optimus titty stickers? I can't be the only one who wants this guy to be as gaudy as possible. That's like the whole point of this toy. Lastly, his head is mounted really far behind his shoulder line. So proportionally, this guy is kind of a nightmare. His arms are too low and too long, his legs are way too long, his torso is kind of tiny and crushed up into 1/5 of his overall height, and then he's got weird hunks of kibble hanging off of him everywhere. And I still think it works. Don't get me wrong, this is all very strange and admittedly off-putting, but at the same time, it's unique, and depending on your mileage, you may find it cool. There's a lot going on here, and with it being a Laser Prime and not an Optimus Prime, it's not wrong for looking how it does. I like the missile pods, and I like the general aesthetic. Hell, I even like the overly long legs for once, because I honestly associate this character most with the art on the Chaos on Velocitron box set, which had him running forward into battle, and these legs are made for running. The head is mixed for me. On the one hand, I am so glad they didn't just go with the Siege Prime's head again like the ER figure just lazily copied, but at the same time, they did get lazy with it yet again by not painting the face, and it's a little awkwardly wide and bulbous. It's cool, it has an aesthetic, but I think it would have been a better one 15% slimmer than it is. So, despite all expectations, I can say that I'm happily impressed with the look of this guy. I know, I'm shocked too. I'm also pretty impressed with his accessories. Who even am I at this point? For starters, no gun, and I'm actually kind of happy without for once. Instead, he gets a sword. A very bent sword. It kind of helps distinguish him from the regular Optimus Prime and turns him into more his own character. I hear the warp in the blade is a ubiquitous QC problem, and I'm not upset about the clear blue nature of this one, as it was the same way with the Chaos on Velocitron version, so aside from the bend, I have no problem with the blade. Other than I think it should have come with 2 of them. Otherwise, he's got an axe in a very weird shape. This can fold up to store in the bed of the alt mode, or somewhere better. And you can combine the sword with it to make an axe with a lot more range, or a sword with a bit more range. I am confused by this. He has another matrix. I could fill a cereal bowl to the brim with the number of matrices I have. Then you get his best accessory, and one of the better accessories I've seen in a good long while, his trailer. For those of you who know how I feel about the ER Prime, that may surprise you, but this thing has so much more effort and care put into it than the Earthrise one. With a more complex shape, better tolerances, a more thoughtful color layout, and it's made out of glossy plastics not found on the main figure. But then get this, whereas the other trailer just opens, this transforms in a pretty fun and satisfying process, and that results in this. Normally, I'm not too big on battle stations, but I think this one actually really works here. It looks intentional enough, and the weapon looks functional enough, though I don't know what these handles down here are for, no one can reach them. And I don't know what this handle back here is for, no one can bend their wrist that way to use it. This pops off and can be mounted onto any of these ports, or you can use these ports to mount other things to make a defensive wall, and you can pop off the gun and give Prime a goofy double blaster. Hey, it's options. Then you got this thing, whatever it is. What is this, like a taser that shocks whoever gets too close in the balls? It can't exactly reach much else. Or is this like the world's most cumbersome grabby claw, so he can pick up trash on the side of the road anytime he drives by it, while causing a million traffic accidents? The sword and axe can store in here while in alt mode by just kind of chucking the sword in there, and then the axe can fit along the shape of it if you like satisfaction. Or you can just put it in sideways, you know, if you're a Satanist. And then the grabby claw acts as a stand for the front of the trailer. So yeah, I kind of love this trailer. It manages to be fun unlike the Earthrise figures one. It's possibly one of the most fun parts of the whole figure. So I'm very happy with the accessories. Not really with the posability though, it kinda sucks. Head only swivels on a joint so tight I'm worried about snapping it off. Though you can use the transformation hinge to fake some up. Return of Sad Robot Man! Shoulders have these weird detent positions that rob them of a lot of range, and only pull a 90, with it being basically impossible to do the normal cheating for more. Though they do have a backwards butterfly mounted awkwardly far behind the shoulder, and you have to get the pylons up and out of the way to use them. Elbows only pull a 90, wrists only swivel. They could have had sword-wielding wrists if they just swapped the side that the ball joints they are on attaches to. Legs are unimpeded in all directions, slightly more than 90 knees, which is sad when these legs are capable of more on any other figures using this tooling, and feet with pivot, toe, and heel down. So yeah, this is really kind of behind the times, and confused at the same time. He was given melee weapons without limbs that promote their use at all. Like, what kind of sword wielder can't swing over their own head? Posability is better on the Titan's Return figure, and that was a triple changer from 2017. Let that sink in. However, we get back to the good times with a solid and interesting transformation that's pretty fun. It's just slightly clashier than the ER Primes, but I would say that I still wind up enjoying this more because it's doing a lot of stuff I've never seen before, like forming the sides with the lower doors of the alt mode. Though his abs really like to pop off, and that's irritating. This part should have been pinned. But I will say that I don't find any of this part overly frustrating. And aside from the legs doing basically nothing again, it's all a lot more involved than I was worried it was going to be. And the resulting truck mode is super cohesive. I just love the look of this thing. Yes, it's got the try-hard flames like the movie version does, but once again, if this is a different character, it's excusable. Though, honestly, otherwise, it's just kind of Edgelord Prime. But hey, Edgelords exist because black and red are a cool color scheme. I love the way the trailer completely fits the design of this guy, though come on, where are my Optimus Rules stickers? This thing should be gaudy as fuck! Actually, that might ruin the cohesion of this mode, which now has blast effect ports that weren't useful in the other modes. So I love this alt mode, and I actually kind of surprisingly love this figure. Don't get me wrong though, this is a mixed bag. Honestly, of everything I've handled from Legacy so far, this is probably the worst executed. And yes, that includes RC. Some of this figure's problems you can find charming, like how I find the positively bonkers proportions. But that one's going to be subjective. You could very easily hate them, and I couldn't blame you for that. Gimmicks and accessories on this guy are really cool, but posability is bad by modern standards, and transformation is going to be more subjective than usual with this one. I like it, but you could very easily wind up more annoyed by its clashy nature and the way the abs like to pop off than me. And again, I couldn't blame you for that. And then the alt mode is just unabashedly good. There's really nothing to complain about there. So you can see my problem here. Robot mode and transformation are good or bad depending on your subjective experience. And the accessories are accessories. Yes, they're great accessories, but they are something that rarely makes up for a figure's other shortcomings, with only the alt mode being a true win and the posability being a true loss. Meaning, 2 out of the 5 tenets of a transformer are up in the air as to whether or not you are going to like them, 1 out of the 5 of them basically doesn't matter if you don't like the other 2 parts, and then the last 2 are split with 1 good and 1 bad, making this very hard to determine whether or not I recommend it. I like this on a subjective level. It's more the classic definition of a toy than I think we're used to at this point, but I think you are more likely to like it than not. Though I also think that you are going to need to look real hard at this before you decide to buy it yourself, to determine whether or not the look of it is for you. If it is, I find this to be an easy recommend. If not, maybe there's a chance you'll still like it, but odds are it won't flip you around. Though I suppose it did with me. At least I don't feel like this is a ripoff of the price like the ER Prime. There is enough effort here, even if not all of it panned out the way they wanted it to. They definitely tried to make this worth the money. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.